Welcome to this free ChatGPT course, and in this course I want to take you from a beginner user of ChatGPT to expert level in just 30 minutes. And I want to show you exactly what ChatGPT is, the fundamentals, how to sign up, and then we'll get much more advanced as we go through this video. Basically, ChatGPT is the fastest growing invention on the internet of all time. It reached 100 million active users in just 1 month when it was released in December of 2022. ChatGPT is an AI model and it was created by a company called OpenAI. And it's a really easy to use chatbot, and it answers your question in a conversational format, just like texting someone else on your phone, for example. And it could help with a ton of different tasks in personal and business life. It could do simple things like asking basic questions that you could follow up with and have a conversation. It could write texts, it could write different articles, blog posts, books, songs, really anything in the written format that you could imagine. You could use ChatGPT to write it. It could help you with coding, brainstorming. It could also summarize large amount of text or even entire videos into a much more condensed version, or it could expand text from 1 paragraph to 1,000 words, and it could help with comprehension and a ton more that I'm gonna cover here. So let's jump in here. First, I'll show you exactly how to get started if you're a complete beginner, and then we'll get to some more advanced option as we go. So very basic and then more advanced. And then we'll finish up with my perfect prompt formula. Prompt is basically what you put into the chat box, and this will give you some of the best results that you could get out of ChatGPT and other type of chatbots as well. To get started with ChatGPT, if you don't have an account just yet, go to chat.openai.com, and right here you could click sign up to sign up for a brand new account. Now there's a paid version too, I'll point that out, and there's a mobile app as well. Right now I recommend you do this on a browser on the internet, so you could do this on your desktop or mobile, and I recommend you just type in an email here and set up your password. You don't have to use any of these other accounts to log in. Once you sign up and log into ChatGPT, this is the page you're going to see. If you don't have the paid version, you won't see ChatGPT Plus. Plus is the paid version. So right up top, it says GPT 3.5. If you have the free version, you're only going to see this one. The paid version is GPT-4. Basically, it's a more advanced model. It's just gonna be much smarter. It does have some limitations though, like the speed is a lot slower than GPT-3. And this has a few different things available as well, like it has plugins and things like that, but I'll keep that for a more advanced video later on. So I'll just use GPT 3.5 right now. This is your prompt box right over here too. Everything you ask it eventually shows up here on the left side. So you could refer to a previous conversation you've had with this chatbot on the left side of the screen. And then if you want to see some settings right here, the 3 dots here, you have a whole settings option. And if you decide to upgrade your plan, you could upgrade from here as well. You'll see an upgrade plan. And if you want to change things to dark mode like I have here, they have light mode and dark mode available. So you get this kind of look under the settings tab. So let me ask my first question or give it my first prompt, and let's see what it does. I'm going to ask what ChatGPT is used for. So the answer to what ChatGPT is used for, it gave it to me in a numbers list here, so I could kind of go through, but a lot of it I mentioned in the beginning of the video. And here, what makes it really interesting is I could actually press regenerate response and get a whole different response. So if I don't like the first response it gives me, it's always going to give me a set of new responses. This is basically language generation. It's called generative AI. So it's creating something from scratch. This is not a simple Google search, and it didn't find that information. It took a lot of different resources that it was trained on, a lot of different text, and it actually created complete original text here that is not available on the web, at least not word by word. And over here, I could go back and forth between the answers it generated, and over here, I could copy it. The thumbs up and thumbs down are a way to train it because it still needs training from its users. But here's what makes ChatGPT a lot more interesting than any type of a search that you would do online. You could actually have a conversation, so I could send a follow-up message. In this case, I'm going to ask for 5 more examples. And just like that, it gave me 5 new examples that, again, I could read through. I'm going to ask it to give me a list of each one of these, but limit it to just 1 sentence. So you could actually make longer text much shorter this way. So now it gave me everything in the number list. It included the 7 from the first prompt, 5 from the second prompt. It put it in this list for me and limited it just to 1 sentence per each line. But now I could even take it a step further and ask it for a different format. This time, I'm gonna ask for a table presentation. And just like that, it's created a table for me with the different applications, the way I could use ChatGPT, and the different description, the one sentence description, a lot easier to read. Again, I could copy this, put it in some kind of a different document, maybe my Excel sheet. Very, very simple to change the format as you go through your prompts. And ChatGPT actually remembers your previous messages in this format up to a certain point. But right now, it's referring back to what he gave me on the previous prompt and is putting it into the table for me. And it's going to continue to do that. If I want to go a different direction, instead of telling it to forget everything I just told it, I could go up here and press new chat and start a brand new conversation. And again, this time I will also get GPT-4 and GPT-3 if I have the paid version, and I could go back and forth every time I start a new conversation. This is again with the plus version, but I'll stick with GPT 3.5 for this next example as well. Next, let's look at ChatGPT for brainstorming ideas. This is one of the best use cases for ChatGPT. So it could help you with travel ideas with some of the more advanced plugin options. With the paid version, it could even find exact prices. It could give you business ideas. It could help you find books to read, movies to see, ton of different use cases for brainstorming. So I'll ask it for my example to give me a business idea for teaching people something. So my prompt's going to be help me develop a business plan for teaching people online. Now I'm going to give you some more advanced prompt ideas. This is very basic one sentence prompts, but it's going to get more developed as we go. And as you can see, it's going very, very quick, giving me a very detailed list. So if I go on top, as you could see, it put it in a very detailed list of an entire business plan that took me 3-4 seconds to get, right? So executive summary, business description, even market analysis, and so on. Now, if I want to simplify it, I could just ask it to summarize large amount of text. Summarizing large amount of text is, again, one of the best ways you could use ChatGPT. And I'm going to show you a couple of different use cases. One is, if you created the text here using ChatGPT, you could say, summarize this. And I could give the length of the summary. In this case, I'm going to say, summarize this just into one paragraph, and it could summarize it into one paragraph. I could say even summarize into one sentence, and it's going to do its best to basically put this into one sentence for me. I could also do the exact same thing with making it much longer. So I could say write a 1,000 word blog. So this is going to now expand it. I could just press enter on that. And he wrote this entire blog post. He showed me the word count for each section. I could obviously ask it to remove that, or I could just delete it myself when I copy this to my website. But he also created an entire title for me, and it created these different sections for each number. Now, from time to time, you'll see that it pauses before it completes. You could just press continue generation, and it will just keep going and finishing what it wrote. Now, you could also summarize text with the free version from other resources. So you could take a transcript from a video, for example, or in this case, let me go to Wikipedia here, and let me go ahead and take this entire thing right here. I'm just gonna copy basically this entire page all the way over here. I'm gonna copy. So I said summarize this text in one paragraph. I pasted that entire page that I just copied. I'm gonna press enter. And just like that, it summarized that whole thing for me in a really nice and easy way. Then I could ask it to write it maybe in bullet point format. That's another type of format. So you have the table format, bullet point format, numbered list. You could really do all kinds of different remixing of content, summarizing content. Really, really useful. Probably the most common use case right now for ChatGPT. Next, let me show you how to actually prompt ChatGPT to give you different writing styles. Write like a different person, basically. So I could ask it, explain this to me like I'm 8 years old, and it's gonna rewrite this in a much, much simpler way here with much simpler language. So not just what it took from Wikipedia and summarize that, it's gonna take that and rewrite it entirely. But now I could say, write it as a college professor, and it's gonna, again, take it the other way, right? So you could simplify things and change the writing style that way, or you could take things and make it much more advanced. Now I could even change the entire writing style. So I could say, write it as a poem, and it could literally take that same text and try to create a poem out of it. You could create a short story out of it. You could even give it writing styles and make it sound happier or more angry or more stern or more professional. With this prompt, I'm gonna ask, write an email to my boss and ask for a raise. Now, every time you do this, I recommend you go and edit it. Also, it's gonna leave some things blank, like it doesn't know the company name because I did not mention that in the prompt. And I could follow up with a prompt to cut the length in half, maybe I think it's too long, and change the tone. So friendly and conversational, because right now it was far too professional and sounded more robotic when I read it. So I could press enter there and then get a whole different version of that email and read through and see if this is a better fit. It's still long, so then I could ask it again, cut it in half again, but the tone is much better this time around. So now I'm gonna shift gear and make it a little bit more advanced with our prompting. We're gonna get a lot more and we don't have to go back and forth as much if our original prompt is a lot more detailed. So I'm gonna press new chat. And right before I do that, let me show you the difference here between 3.5 and 4. And they will most likely release another version pretty soon here too. And I'll do a comparison between those two. So GPT 3.5 basically is free to all users. It's available to the paid users as well. But GPT-4 has basically a much larger data set that it was trained on. So by default, it's much smarter than GPT 3.5. Once you use 4, it's really hard to go backwards. But it does have a limitation of speed. It's much slower, and it has browsing with Bing built into it. OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT, has a partnership with Microsoft, and Microsoft makes the search engine Bing. So this has web access with Bing. GPT 3.5, right now as I'm recording this, technically doesn't have web access. It just has information from what it was trained on, but they're rolling that out soon. So most likely by the time you watch this, it will have web access as well. So you'll have to just change that to web access. It's still in beta format, as you can see. Plugin, basically, if I show you this, there's a whole plugin store. So if you used iPhone or Android, you know how there's a whole app store and you could download different things that do different things. Well, they have a whole plugin store here. Right now, it looks like there's 19 pages worth of plugins. And I've made, again, comprehensive videos on some of these top 10 lists and things like that. So you could go ahead and check those out. But for example, this one gives you some web access here. But we have that by default. So a lot of different things you could do with ChatGPT 4 that you can't do right now with 3.5, including right now access to Bing, which hopefully rolls out to the free one soon. But the big limitation with 4, you'll see here as I use it for the next prompt, how slow it is compared to 3.5. And it does right now have a limit. So right now I can only do so many messages, 25 messages every 3 hours. So that's why I usually go back and forth between the paid one and the free one, or I use other things like Bing has an AI, Google Bard is another AI tool that is similar to this. I have different videos about those as well. Okay, let's go to the more advanced section of giving the best prompts here to ChatGPT. We'll talk about prompt with context. So to get more out of ChatGPT, you want to give it more context before asking a question. This makes it a longer prompt, but your results are going to be far better. So for example, one of the first things you could ask it is you could say, I want you to act as my, and then fill in the blank. So here's an example. I want you to act as my, and you fill in the blank here. So some of the options are, it can be your marketer. If you're doing things for marketing for your business, for example, it could be your travel agent. If you're using it for a writing assistant, you could say, I want you to act as my writing assistant, or life coach. There's a whole bunch of different things. I'll put a link to a resource that shows you a list of 100 different ways you could actually give it this kind of context. And it's going to be much smarter if you start a prompt this way. So with that kind of prompt in mind, this is what I recommend you try out. I want you to act as my travel agent. That's where I filled in the blank for my use case. I want you to find a romantic getaway to Europe. Your budget as the travel agent is $10,000. Total travel time is 6 days for 2 people. So by giving it that much context and setting up the beginning the way I just showed you here, the result is going to be far better here. And there are plugins for travel. If you're using GPT-4, for example, right now I don't have any activated, but those will also search the internet with things like Expedia and give you much more specific results here, even show you the pricing and availability too if you use those plugins. And sometimes GPT-4, especially what it does, it asks me follow-up questions to then give me a more detailed response. In 3.5 with the same exact prompt, a lot of times it will just spit out some kind of a plan. But this time it asked me, what's my destination? So do I have a preference? Maybe I don't. I could say no. Do I have accommodations that I care about, like luxury hotels? Do I have activities that I'm more interested in, right? Everyone's going to be different. So having these kind of follow-up questions, especially when it's going to do a further response, is going to be useful. And I could just ignore that and say, you choose everything. And if I want to be lazy and not give it any kind of input, it's going to do a really good job here, giving me an outline based on not knowing anything about my preferences but my original prompt. So in the original prompt, I could have even added more, but I usually like to add as much as I showed you and have these back and forth conversation, or see what it's gonna give me and then refine it from there. I could say, you know what, I don't like day 4, let's do something else for day 4, see what it comes up with, and keep going with this kind of prompt conversation. Now let me show you compare and contrast type of prompts. So I'm gonna ask it compare Mac versus PC, and then try to compare 2 different options that I have. You could do this with a ton of different things. You could even compare 2 different products that you're not sure about, maybe 2 different gift ideas that you have. You could try to compare and contrast them. So this gave me a pretty detailed list of hardware, software, performance, user experience, and price points. And in this case, I could again ask it for a table. And then again, I could follow up with what I showed you before, which is creating a table, this time asking for the pros and cons. So I have a better look here of comparing and contrasting 2 different things. This is very, very useful here. As you can see, here's the pros list for both categories. Here's the cons list. I didn't have to tell it what kind of rows to make me, what kind of columns. It just figures that out. And you could expand again by asking it to expand this table to be 5 times longer with a ton of different things that you care about, and get that compare and contrast between 2 different things. Next, let's talk about ChatGPT and its creative power, especially when it comes to writing. So it could help you write emails. I showed you that a little bit. It could help you write resumes and poetries. It could help you write entire video scripts. This is not written by ChatGPT. I wrote this myself. It could help you with advertising. It could help you with speeches, personal, professional, ton of different ways to use it for writing. So here, I'm gonna give it a prompt. I want you to act as my marketer. I want you to draft a marketing email for my new learning platform. And here it's gonna write me this entire long email. This time I didn't give it any context, right? The only context I gave it is basically, I want you to act as my writing partner and write me an email. But I could get a lot more involved, as I mentioned in the previous prompt. The more context you give it, the first answer is always going to be better. Now, GPT-4 sometimes asks you for a follow-up, so it just doesn't spit out something like this the first time around. Sometimes it does, but you could always give it more context to get a better output the first time, so you don't have to back and forth or go back and forth many, many times. Next prompt is called a proofreading prompt. So you could actually give it some text that you wrote yourself. You could ask it to proofread it for you for grammar and spelling, and you could also extend it too. So my prompt is, can you proofread this text? And then it's my text from the beginning of this video, that script, and then it could proofread it, and it's gonna go ahead and rewrite it. And as you can see here, it gave me a revised version, so it rewrote what I wrote. It gave me the revised version here, it fixed the spelling and grammar, and it also gave me the changes that he made. So sometimes I ask for that. I say, fix this or proofread this and give me the changes in a numbered list. In this case, I didn't do that, and it still chose to give me that list, which is very helpful. But if you want to see that list, so you don't have to really analyze what you wrote and then what it wrote, you could actually just ask for the changes, really easy. So little things, even it changed like all time, it changed it of all time. That helped with a sentence flow. This is a grammar issue. There's some spelling issues. There's places where I missed a comma, right? Very easy way to quickly write something, give it to ChatGPT, and get a much better version back. And then if I want to expand it, I could say, now expand this to 3 paragraphs, and then it's going to take that same writing style and give me a much longer version of it, right? This has really made me probably 5 to 10 times more efficient in writing. I still have to proofread it. I still have to put my own spin to it. I still don't really use it for my scripts yet, but this has really come a long way in making people a lot more efficient in their writing. Now, let me introduce you to one of my favorite ways to use ChatGPT. This is really gonna change the way you use it, and it's called prompt priming. So this concept is basically giving ChatGPT some context before you even ask the question. So it's not crafting a long prompt, you're getting it to learn from you before you ask it to do anything. So for example, I'm gonna give ChatGPT a large amount of text and ask it to analyze that writing style. Then I'm gonna give it a prompt and ask to write in that writing style. So the way I do this and why it makes it really, really powerful is usually it's my own writing style. So maybe the script I wrote for this video, I could take that script, give it to ChatGPT and ask it to analyze. So my prompt is gonna be analyze this writing style. I don't want you to do anything else. Let me know when you've completed. And I'm gonna paste that long paragraph that I'm using right now, basically the script for this video. And it says this writing style is informative, instructional. It provides clear, concise. Basically, it just gave me a summary of what it is, but it's not doing anything else. But now what I could do is I could give it a prompt like this. Write a new video script on how to create a YouTube video in that same writing style. And now that it knows that writing style, it created a very clear step-by-step guide. It has things like narrator, cut to the shot of a person, things like that I could take out if I don't want, but because I use the word script, that's what it's doing. But it wrote things in the same way that I would write things. It's not gonna be perfect, so usually I have a few follow-ups. I would say I wouldn't use words like this, please simplify a little further, or is too simple, please make it a little bit more adult, or write it for college students. So depending on who I'm talking to, I could tailor that a little bit, but just like that, I could give it the priming, the prompt priming, and get it to write in a specific way. Some things it already knows. So if I said, write this like Shakespeare, it's going to know that. But in most cases, you could take your own writing if you wanted to write like you, or someone maybe you like, maybe an author you like, you could basically give it a large amount of text from that writer, say, learn that style, and then write the follow-up in that style, like an email or a video script in this case. Sometimes coming up with your own prompt could be challenging. Sometimes you don't know anything about a topic you're trying to explore. So in that case, you could use ChatGPT to be your prompt engineer. You could ask it to give you prompts so you know what to ask it. So for example, I could say, I'm trying to become a software developer. What prompt should I give you to help me learn the path? I'm a complete beginner. And then by doing that, it's basically gonna write out the different questions that you should ask it. So it's asking me programming basics. What's the basic concept in programming? I wouldn't know that prompt to ask it, right? These type of questions that it's gonna draft up for me. And it's gonna do it in a ton of different ways, right? What are the pros and cons in different programming languages, right? That kind of contrast prompting that we talked about. You could ask it for coding exercises. Give me a sample coding exercise. It's gonna give you some homework that way. Understanding concepts, right? That's the concepts kind of prompt where you could ask it to explain different types of things like object-oriented programming, something maybe I don't know anything about. And all these different things, including career guidance in this very specific use case, you could do this with everything. You could turn ChatGPT into the perfect prompt engineer and basically figure out what question to ask to pursue in a certain way. You could always do this in a conversational format, but sometimes I like to see a big picture overview, get a list of 8, 10 questions, and then kind of work my way through that, especially when it comes to things that are very big picture, like choosing a career. ChatGPT was also trained on a lot of different computer programs. I've been actually using it to learn programming, coding. So you could use it to do that, or if you're a developer, you could also get help. You could actually give it code and fix errors in your code, ton of different options. I'll just show you a simple one regular people could use. So the prompt is, help me write code for a game I could run on my computer for tic-tac-toe. I'm a complete beginner. Give me everything in a step-by-step guide. And it's gonna give you the step-by-step guide, but it's gonna write the code. And look how fast it's going right here. And I took this, I won't take the time to show you what happens here, but literally from my very little knowledge of how these type of things work, it basically showed me exactly what I need to do. And then I followed up with a couple of questions. And then I asked it, what program do I need to download? How do I do this if I don't know anything about computer programming? And he literally gave me to everything in a step-by-step guide where in 12 minutes, I was playing tic-tac-toe on my computer using this exact code. I copied this code. I use a program called Visual Studio. I pasted it. I created a couple of different documents based on the steps he gave me, and I had a code. Now, this is not going to be some advanced game, right? I use some very basic stuff, and I only spent 10, 12 minutes doing this. But the fact that this could do so much for complete beginners opens it up to be a whole learning platform. And a lot of developers are using programs like ChatGPT right now to help them become far more efficient in their day-to-day. Now, finally, let me show you the perfect prompt formula. This is basically a format that you should use to get the best answer right up front. And then you could always obviously have your back and forth with a lot of the things we talked about up to this point. But the perfect prompt formula is basically this. First, start with context plus specific information plus the intent, and then plus the response format that you're looking for. That's the perfect prompt formula. I'll put it on screen here. So let me show you an example here of how I fill in the blanks for those 4 sections. Context, I'm a beginner cook. Remember, we had a different types of context where I ask it to be a cooking expert. So it kind of depends which direction you want to go. Both will work. Then you could say, I'm trying to make Italian cuisine. That's very specific information. Then what's your intent? Sort of what's your goal, call to action here? Can you provide me a simple and easy to follow recipe? That's your intent. That's what you're trying to achieve. Then you could ask it for the response format. You don't always have to do that, but remember we had table, bullet points, paragraphs, 1,000 words, 2 minutes. In this case, write me a step-by-step list with an ingredient list too. So here it came up with the Italian dish. I didn't tell it what kind of Italian dish, but I could have, and it would have been even more context. So spaghetti here, and then ingredients here, it told me exactly what I need to buy, step-by-step instruction. So by giving it my desired response format, it basically just did that for me instead of having to guess and then I have to go back and forth. So again, using that perfect prompt formula with those 4 different steps is usually gonna give you the results you want the first time. So this will save you a lot of back and forth time and make you far more efficient using the perfect prompt formula. My team and I are also putting together an entire learning platform focused on AI. It's going to be a Netflix-style learning platform, and it's going to have entire courses. It's going to have individual longer tutorials. It's going to have download resources, an entire community of like-minded people, and it's going to always be updated. It's going to have a new AI tool section, so you never miss the latest AI tool. And more importantly, learn how to use it to be more productive right away. And we're adding new expert instructors and entire courses all the time, and you get access to all of that. So if you watch this before it's released, make sure you sign up for the wait list. And if it's released, you could try it out right now. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you could implement some of the things you learned here. Again, a lot of the resources in the description, and I hope to catch you next time.